Hi everyone, how's it going? Today we're going to be making another quick tie-over video until the time comes for my big Jordan Peterson debunk. So, what are we going to be looking at today? Well, today we're going to be looking at some more anti-evolution propaganda. This time coming from the very infamous Facebook page, Where's the Evolution? Now, Where's the Evolution made a number of the info cards that were used by the Bible Radio app in their anti-evolution propaganda, which we debunked in the last episode, but they also made a lot more. So, let's delve into some of these a lot more to see if there's any merit to their claims that these cards provide evidence against the basis for the entire field of biology. Needless to say, if we are real skeptics, we need to look at their evidence and weigh it up against peer-reviewed science. Okay, so card number 1 shows us two skeletons, which it claims are two Hoatzin skeletons. Now, one it claims to be a modern Hoatzin, which as far as I can tell it is, and the other it claims that scientists say is 34 million years old. They put 34 million in quotes because they believe, of course, that the world is less than 6,000 years old. But there is a huge problem. See, that bird on the right? That's not a Hoatzin. That is the holotype specimen of the extinct bird Phoropanarium, which was described in this wonderful paper back in 1993. Now first, I want to point out that the scientists who described Phoropanarium did not, in fact, claim that it was 34 million years old. I have no idea where this date came from. They note that it was found in the fossil butte member of the Green River Formation, which has been dated to the Wasatchian stage of the early Eocene, around 55 to 50 million years ago. So only around 20 million years out? But hey, if the specimen's even older than they say and is just like a modern Hoatzin, then that is good evidence in their case against evolution, right? Right? I mean, it sure would ruin their argument if, when you look at the details of this skeleton, it looks nothing like a Hoatzin whatsoever, wouldn't it? Now, Phoro's exact taxonomic placement has been a little bit unclear over time, but we can clearly see on this image that it has much longer legs than a Hoatzin and proportionally smaller feet. In fact, in the paper describing Phoro, they compare the leg proportions to a roadrunner and say that it likely spent a significant portion of its life on the ground, whereas modern-day Hoatzins spend most of their life in the trees. So that's a bit of a huge discrepancy behind the idea that this is the same animal and has never changed over the course of tens of millions of years. It's almost like this is not evidence against evolution at all. To make matters even worse, a recent study suggests that Phoro is actually not even closely related to Hoatzins, but is actually a primitive member of the Turacau group. So, Where's the Evolution just lied. They said that a skeleton that doesn't actually look much like a Hoatzin is a Hoatzin skeleton, even though it belongs to a bird not even very closely related to Hoatzins, and then said that the lack of change between these same Hoatzins is evidence against evolution. Hey, I can just lie. Hey, look, this lemon is a new species of goat. Where's the evolution? Sticking to birds, here's an example of them just describing the process of evolution in a swallow and then arbitrarily claiming that this disproves evolution, even though they're looking at something happening on a century timescale where we wouldn't expect speciation in a bird. So like, what? But hey, when Where's the Evolution isn't using direct examples of evolution to try to disprove evolution, they also like to make info cards about extinct seabirds. Here's their card claiming that the extinct seabird Ichthyornis, which as we can see here has a serrated beak, is just an example of the same kind of beak structures that we see in modern day goosanders that have serrated beaks. Therefore, no evolution took place. But there's a problem. You see, Ichthyornis didn't have a serrated beak. This is not the same structure. Ichthyornis' beak had teeth. Here are the teeth. Do you know what goosanders don't have, and nor does any other living bird? Teeth. Goosanders had to evolve serrated bills because they don't have teeth. Now, they claim that the serrated beak that doesn't exist in Ichthyornis means that it doesn't link birds with dinosaurs, but the fact that this bird has teeth, and dinosaurs have teeth, and many of them have very similar morphology to birds, and no living bird has teeth, but Ichthyornis is clearly a bird, pretty much obliterates your argument. They just lied again! Speaking of these guys just outright lying, here is a specimen of Tasmanian devil, which looks just like a modern Tasmanian devil, and which they claim scientists say is a 23-million-year-old fossilized skeleton. Do scientists actually say that? No! At first glance, I saw this skeleton and thought, hey, this just looks like a modern, non-fossilized skeleton, what with all of its white, fresh-looking bones that show no obvious signs of fossilization. But then I did a reverse image search and found out that this specimen was killed in the year 1910, as discussed in the biography of the eminent biologist Professor Theodore Thomson Flynn on the University of Tasmania website. This is a specimen that was given to Flynn by Colonel J.E.C. Lord in 1910 so that he could study its anatomy. And we can interpret that at the time, this was a freshly dead corpse, because his study of the animal's anatomy was not a study of its bones, but a study of its vagina and uterus. And to make things even worse for this argument, his paper, which is here and which you can read in the description, gives no reference to this being a fossil specimen at all, which is frickin' weird for an allegedly 23-million-year-old skeleton. It's almost like they just lied. Again! Like, who claimed that this was a 23-million-year-old skeleton? Dory from Finding Nemo? Speaking of fish, here's a post they made arguing that since fish can't survive on land, no fish could possibly have evolved to come onto land. That's seemingly ignoring the fact that we have lungfish who have lungs and who can survive for months on land by hibernating in the ground. That's also ignoring the fact that we have freshwater eels that migrate over land from freshwater body to freshwater body and from freshwater body to the sea, and which can spend several hours at a time out of water. That's also ignoring the fact that we have mud skippers in intertidal habitats in some parts of the world, which spend the entire low tide time out of the water. So we actually have several examples of fish that have adapted to do remarkably well on land, and which, given the right set of selection pressures, could plausibly adapt to become terrestrial animals in a few tens of millions of years for all we know. This does not argue against evolution at all, when your point is just wrong. But hey, let's go on to this flying squirrel from what they say, scientists say, is 160 million years ago. They are at least right about the age, but this animal, Myopatagium, is not a squirrel. In fact, it's not even a true mammal, but a more primitive mammalia form that has a lot of skeletal characteristics closer to non-mammalian cynodonts than to modern mammals. Now, there are undeniably a lot of similarities between Myopatagium and a flying squirrel. It undeniably has a very similar skull and skull structure, but there are also a lot of differences. For example, there's no evidence that it had the long cartilaginous extensions to hold the gliding membrane in place. And as discussed in the paper describing it, the shoulder girdle possesses a scapular coracoid consisting of a coracoid, a separate procoracoid perforated by a foramen, and a scapula, all of which are similar to non-mammal mammalia forms, but not to flying squirrels. There's also the shape of the robust, strong, thick clavicle and interclavicle, which closely resembles that of birds, but not that of flying squirrels. It's almost like this animal features a number of convergently evolved characteristics with a number of gliding and flying animals that are alive today. Almost as though it convergently evolved to fill that niche. There's also the long-fingered hands and feet that Myopatagium had, which are very similar to the feet of bats, and which the authors suggest may have helped Myopatagium to roost. So yeah, not a flying squirrel, but a great case study for someone who's interested in convergent evolution. Now this next one's just hilarious and bizarre, because they only list a 5,000 year age difference between these specimens, which is not a long time if you're expecting large-scale evolutionary changes that you expect to see being visible in a fossil. That's actually a recurring problem on this Facebook page, is that many of the cards they pick that I haven't really been going over in detail are from animals dated to less than 5 million years apart. Timescales on which many animals are not really expected to change all that much based on what we see in the fossil record. It's almost like they deliberately stack the deck in favor of not looking like changes happen, but this one is just an obscenely short amount of time. Anyway, now we need to go on to this alleged tumbling flower beetle, which they claim that scientists claim is 251 million years old. Now, do scientists actually claim that this flower beetle is 251 million years old? I'll give you 3 guesses, but the answer is no! This beetle is actually on the Virtual Fossil Museum website, and it's preserved in amber that was found in Plio-Pleistocene deposits on the Andes Mountains. So, when were the Pliocene and the Pleistocene? Were they 251 million years ago? No! They've been dated to between 5.3 and 0.1 million years ago, i.e. this is not an old beetle. It might even be as young as 100,000 years. So why did you lie? And now we have yet another case of them just lying outright. Let's take a look at this card, where they compare what they call a tailed spider with what they call a modern tailed spider. But if you, like me, are a bug nut, you'll know that that is not a spider. The one on the right is a whip scorpion, which are a group of arachnids that are closely related to spiders, but which possess both scorpion-like pincers at the front and these very long tails. Now, in this primitive spider relative, which we see on the left, we can see that the front half looks very much like a spider, but the back half looks very much like a whip scorpion. This, to any paleontologist, should tell you that spiders and whip scorpions evolved from a common ancestor which had a whip scorpion-like abdomen, and that in spiders it lost that trait as they adapted more to hunting in webs, presumably because a long tail would keep getting stuck in webs. Meanwhile, the whip scorpions have evolved a characteristic that spiders did not evolve, i.e. these two bloody great pincers on the front of its face. It's almost like the similarities between these specimens is clear evidence for a common ancestor between spiders and the whip scorpions diverging into two separate lineages. So they just showed evidence for evolution, extremely convincing evidence for evolution as an argument against evolution. Are these people high? Where's the evolution? More like, where's the evolution? But you know who's not gonna lie to you? Rockman! That's right, everyone, it's time for our weekly game of Rockman. Rockman is the sentient weapon which I shall use to take over the world. These letters represent a geological phrase. Every week, you guess a letter, and if your letter is correct, then it goes on the board, and you are one step closer to stopping me from summoning Rockman and using his power to take over the world. But if you guess the letter wrong, then another rock goes on Rockman. The most upvoted letter last week, with a grand total of 8 upvotes, was B. So, is B on the board, or is another rock going on Rockman? B is on the board! Congratulations, everyone, for another victory against me. Let's have a look at where the board currently stands. Can you guess the next letter and prevent the rise of Rockman? Put your guess in the comments below, and the most upvoted letter will get chosen in the next episode. Then you can tune in next time to find out if your guess was correct. Thank you very much to everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, subscribe, ring the little bell icon, and if you really like the kinds of videos that I make, then it would mean a huge amount to me if you would subscribe to me on Patreon and help support me financially. These little pseudoscience debunks are really just something I can do without too much effort whilst I try to focus my time on the really big video essay that I have been spending basically the past few months editing, and several things in it are now out of date, and I discovered some audio problems with parts of my recordings, so I'm actually going to need to go back and refilm parts of it, which isn't great. But hey, hopefully that will be the next video, but if we get to another 2 or 3 weeks without a video, then I will be posting another silly video like this one, just to keep things tied over and keep the channel sort of supported in the algorithm. I really hope you like what's coming up. As said, the next big video, which is hopefully the next video, is the first part of my Jordan Peterson debunk. Then we're going to be doing another video on prehistoric planet. Then we're going to be talking about some cool paleontological discoveries that have been made recently, but which I just didn't have a chance to make YouTube videos about because I have not had the free time. But in any case, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope that we see you again soon. Bye!